the name of Alex Banayan, who spoke on our stage, and he's the author of a book called The Side Door. His philosophy was to try and get something done. There's a front door, there's a back door, but sometimes there's a side door. There's a way to get something done that maybe is non-conventional. So it was a great talk, but I want you to hear just an excerpt of it. One, how to face your fears. And two is a great story of how he built a relationship with the legendary Larry King. Check it out. I think you're going to enjoy it.
You know, one of the more surprising lessons, and I know you all are entrepreneurs and, you know, you're network marketing. And when I was coming here, I was thinking about what's something that unites this entire group. And there's a lot of obvious traits, but something that resonated with me is that you all have to deal with tremendous amounts of fear on a daily basis. Tremendous amounts of fear on a daily basis. Now, when I had started this journey, you know, something you have to understand about me is if you talk to my sisters, they'll tell you that when we were growing up, I was the most scared kid you would ever meet. You know, I had a nightlight on until I was 12. I never went on roller coasters. I still can't watch a scary movie. So when I had started this journey of trying to track down the world's most successful people, I was completely consumed by fear the whole way through. And I became obsessed with trying to figure out how, you know, if you look at Bill Gates or Elon Musk, they had to have been fearless, or else how else would they have achieved what they did? And when I started doing the interviews over and over and over again, without any exception, I came away realizing that every single person was not only scared, they were completely terrified the whole way through. And that didn't make any sense to me. And what I ended up realizing is that none of them achieved fearlessness. Instead, it was courage. And while the words sound similar, the difference is critical, especially for entrepreneurs. Fearlessness is jumping off of the cliff and not thinking about it. That's idiotic. Courage, on the other hand, is acknowledging your fear, analyzing the consequences, and then deciding you care so much about it, you're still going to take one thoughtful step forward anyway. Taking one thoughtful step forward anyway. And it's not fearlessness that we should be looking after, it's courage. And, you know, when I, again, was also coming here, I was just thinking about really what your lives must be like, and I realized that a lot of it has to do with persistence. And a story came to my mind. You know, the way all these interviews came to be, each one was an adventure in and of itself. And probably the most miraculous interview took place about halfway through the journey. I had just come out of an 8-month quest of trying to track down Warren Buffett. And what you need to know about that is it ended as a beautiful disaster, a giant train wreck. And, you know, I was really down. And one of the beautiful things about this journey is that whenever I would be down, it would always be my best friends who would pull me back up. So one day, my best friend Corwin was like, dude, you got to get out of bed. You can't just live under the covers for 2 weeks. So he took me out to lunch, and we went to a grocery store to get some sandwiches. And we're sitting in, you know, literally a place just like this. You know, we're sitting on the sidewalk, eating our sandwiches, you know, watching the cars go by. And Corwin's like, come on, dude, don't you have any other interviews lined up? And I'm like, dude, I got nothing. And he's like, come on, don't you, you know, let's say you did have an interview. You know, who would you want to talk to? And I'm like, dude, even if I had an interview, I'd probably f that up too. Look what happened with Warren Buffett. And Corwin's like, dude, you can't be so hard on yourself. Interviewing isn't a science, it's an art. And right as he said that, the most miraculous moment of my entire journey happened. A car pulled up with tinted windows, parked right in front of us in the loading zone. The door swung open, and out walked Larry King. Now, I don't know if you guys are like me. When things line up perfectly like that, that's when I get the most scared. That's when I become the most paralyzed. I call it the flinch. And I remember just sitting there, seeing Larry King walk right past me, and go right through the grocery store sliding doors without saying a thing. It was like my mouth was wired shut. And Corin's like, dude, why didn't you say anything? And this is, I call it the flinch, and I think the flinch is great at making logical excuses. The flinch doesn't tell you, you're scared. The flinch tells you logical reasons why you shouldn't do it. So I turn to Corin, and I'm like, dude, I don't want to be that guy. He probably just wants to get something for his family. And Corin's like, dude, at least you can say hi. And then, the flinch kept making excuses, and I was like, he's probably deep in the grocery store. There's no way I'll be able to find him. And Corin's like, dude, he's 80 years old. How far could he get? So I'm like, okay. So very reluctantly, I get up, and I'm walking into the grocery store, and I'm looking around, and, there's the bakery section. I'm looking around. No Larry. And I go over to the grocery section, produce, vegetables. No Larry. And it was right then when I realized he had parked in the loading zone. So he must be leaving any minute now. So this bolt of adrenaline kicks in, and I start sprinting through this grocery store, running down each aisle, looking down, no Larry, no Larry, no Larry, no Larry. I'm cutting around through the frozen food section, sprinting down there, dodging an old lady, no Larry. And I realize he has to be at the checkout counter. So I'm running to the checkout counter, no Larry, no Larry, no Larry, no Larry. And at this point, I want to kick myself because he had been right in front of me and I didn't say a thing. And, I'm walking out and I'm in the parking lot, looking down at my feet, and I look up, and there, right about where you are, 20 feet away from me, is Larry King, suspenders and all. And I don't know what gets into me, but I guess all this emotion combusted, and uncontrollably, I yelled at the top of my lungs, Mr. King! And the echo reverberated in the parking lot, and the poor guy has had quadruple bypass surgery. I'll never forget him, going, jumping up in the air like this and turning around like he's looking at the Grim Reaper. And, at this point, I don't know what to do. So I just go up to him like, Mr. King, my name's Alex. I'm 20 years old. I've always wanted to say hi. And he's like, okay, hi. And he walks the other way. And I'm thinking, shit, what am I going to do? So I'm just awkwardly following him to his car. We finally get to his car. It's complete silence. And he's just looking at me. He opens the driver's side door and I'm like, wait, Mr. King, can I go to breakfast with you? And he looks at me like I'm a lunatic. But before I can respond, he looks around on the sidewalk and sees there's a dozen people watching this go down. So he just looks at me and he's like, okay. And I'm like, oh my God, thank you so much. And I'm like, oh my God, I'll see you tomorrow. And he's like, okay. So he gets in the car and I'm like, wait, Mr. King, what time? And he just looks at me and slams the door shut. And I'm like, okay, he must have not heard me. Mr. King, what time? He just looks at me and starts the car engine. I'm now standing in front of his windshield, waving my arms. Mr. King, what time? And he just looks at me and he's like, 9 o'clock, and speeds off. So the next morning, it's 9 o'clock. And I walk into his bagel shop, and, there he is sitting at the corner booth with his best friends. And there's a seat at the table. And, I had reflected the night before about how I had acted, so I thought maybe I should be a bit more gentle today. And I'm like, hey, good morning, Mr. King. And he's like, I'm like, okay, maybe I should sit at the table next to him and wait for him to call me over. 5 minutes goes by, 30 minutes, an hour, and then finally, he stands up. And he starts walking toward me, and I can feel my cheeks lifting. And then he walks right past me and heads for the exit. Thank you for laughing at my misery. He's heading for the exit, and I just put my hand up, and I'm like, Mr. King? And he's like, what is it, kid? What do you want? And at this point, I could feel a really sharp, familiar pain in my chest. And I just looked at him and I was like, honestly, I just wanted some advice on how to interview people. And this slow smile spread across his face as if to say, why didn't you say so? And he puts his hand on my shoulder and gives me one of the best monologues of interview advice. And at the end, he looks up as if he's debating something in his mind. And he looks back at me and he's like, all right, kid, tomorrow, 8:45, see you here. And I show up the next morning at 8:45. He calls me over to his table. He asks me why I even want to interview in the first place. I tell him about the book, and he's like, okay, I'm in. And over the course of the past 5 years, I've been to breakfast with him over 50 times. Thank you so much.
So that is Alex Banayan. Myself, I had the opportunity as well to get to know Mr. Larry King and be interviewed by him. What an honor. But there's always a way. Sometimes you have to be willing to do something that's uncomfortable, maybe embarrassing, maybe out of your comfort zone. You have to be persistent. A lot of lessons in simple stories. But I hope you got some enjoyment out of this clip. I hope you use it to move your business forward. And I will see you tomorrow.